There was recently a film released on Netflix called Leave the World Behind. This was spearheaded by the Obamas, and it is amazing. All this stuff that we just talked about the negativity online, the narcissism that is stemmed up in our society, the misogyny, the racism, the sexism, the xenophobia, the wars that are raging on because some people were just too greedy to let stuff go. That is all confronted in this film, and it's confronted in a way that is just so poetic. It's so off the cuff. It's subtle. It's thought-provoking. My husband and I sat down and watched it. I mean, this is a 2-hour movie, but we wanted it to be 3 hours. We wanted it to be longer because it was just that good. And with all of this right here, giving us wisdom, in a Chaucer's Canterbury Tales way of saying it but not really saying it, giving us wisdom on Israel, on Ukraine, on Trump, on white supremacists, on the neo-Nazis, on all of these things, on these old white men who want to take away the ability for women to have in vitro fertilization or to have an abortion. This film basically touches us on all of these culture questions without really saying it. I mean, Chaucer's Canterbury Tales all the way. And with all of that, with this strong statement, I mean, this is a strong statement of hope, of humanity, of brotherhood, of fraternity, of love, of sisterhood. With all of that, the Fox News people focused on one thing. And it's always over their head, and this is not just Fox News. I see people in everyday life who get caught up on black people talking about terms of race, as if Europeans and white people didn't make this a thing with eugenics and phrenology. It's absolutely bizarre, and we live in these constraints today because, I mean, we would love to not be talking about race all the time, but there's clearly disparity within wealth, within education, within leadership, within government because of racism, and so this movie really, really talks about this candidly, and it talks about unconscious biases in a way that just shows you that even racists are human. Even racists, maybe we all have a little bit of racist streaks in us. Maybe we all have those gremlin selves like we talked about earlier. Maybe we all do things from time to time that just aren't nice, Okay, well, admit it and move on from it, So guys, long story short, it was just bizarre. It was just bizarre. Fox News got fixated on this one line, on this one line, just right over the head, and this happens a lot. This happens all the time where people try to have a conversation about racism, about sexism, about homophobia, and some people are just not there. They're not there to have this conversation. This whole movie is a metaphor, it's a metaphor. It's an artistic oof. And it's talking about some really deep stuff. And out of all of this stuff, Fox News got fixated on one line. And so they are that epitome of that person who just, or that entity, that group, whatever, that is just not there. You're trying to have a conversation about XYZ and they're still on ABC, okay? So this is an article from MSNBC. Conservatives fixate on one line and leave the world behind and miss the point. This is by Robin Autry. So, I'm going to skip to the one line that they get fixated on. It says, in a film that has a running time of 2 hours and 21 minutes and revolves around a mysterious disaster hitting New York City, some critics have latched onto a single line. Ruth Scott, played by, hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, Myha'la, I think that's it, Myha'la Harold, makes to her father, George Scott, played by, again, hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, Mahershala Ali, as a pandemonium breaks out in New York City. And before I say the line that's said or whatever, Julia Roberts is the Karen in this movie, and I don't think that Karens are necessarily horrible people. I think a lot of Karens are just confused. They just are confused. You're talking to them about pronouns and inclusion and what the symbolism, the original meaning of woke was, and about culture and about, nuanced stuff. And they just are like not there. And so that doesn't mean that this is a bad person. It just means like more conversation is needed. That's it. That's all that it is. Julia Roberts is that person. And eventually by the end of the movie, she becomes a lovable character. Ethan Hawke is like the male Karen, he's kind of spineless by the beginning of the movie. But at the end, you see them come together. The black people have their faults too, the young girl, she's always calling her dad out, and he basically is always trying to kind of hide stuff and be strong and protect her from stuff. And she's calling him out. And the young black lady in here can be kind of abrasive, Like they are all basically avatars of those stereotypes almost. But that is what's truthful in it. And it's supposed to teach you something. It's supposed to help you walk away from it with something of value, with a nugget of wisdom. With all that being said, right over the Karen in the movie's head, right over Julia Roberts in the movie's head, and right also over Fox News' head, apparently. This is the line that they get fixated on. With all of the just, that good wisdom, nuggets of truth, wisdom, reflection, makes you think, pensive, thought-provoking that I just explained. Out of 2 hours of all of that, they got fixated on this one line. The line was, if the world falls apart, trust should not be doled out easily, especially to white people. That's the one line that Fox News got caught up on. Like, let me try not to laugh, but it's like, do they not understand the police brutality that led to things like Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Trayvon Martin? Do they not understand that? Do they not understand Jim Crow? Do they not understand the transatlantic slave trade? Do they not understand even today where, if you come into work one day and you're not smiling, automatically you're labeled as an angry black person? Do they not understand that? Is it like a secret that a lot of black people don't trust white people? Should it be a bad thing or make them villains because of something they're doing because they've developed it as a protective mechanism, and rightly so? It's like, anyway, let me just tell you what the article ends with saying. It says, at a certain point, one of the youngest characters in the film happens upon an abandoned house that could serve as a bunker and save them all if they can overcome their distrust of one another to find their way to it. This right here says everything. If everybody can overcome, and this is on all sides, right? If we can all overcome our distrust of one another, we could make it through. That's far from certain, but it's possible. And it's the possibility of our working together, of us finding our way to each other when needed, that threatens the fear-based message of the far right. The Obamas are experts at their own brand or inclusive populism premised on radical hope and going high in the face of bullies, guns, and intentional chaos. Conservatives are fixated on trashing this film because they know the hopefulness presented by Barack and Michelle Obama is a rejection of the cynicism they promote. Whew, that's strong. That's strong right there. Let's talk about this for 2 seconds, because although I find that to be extremely strong, I'm not sure that that's the whole story, and it comes back to what I was just saying a moment ago about stuff going over people's heads. And I might not have the popular opinion, I often don't, but I don't believe that you should be negotiating with terrorists. I don't believe that black people should put themselves on the end of a boot of a white supremacist or a neo-Nazi or a KKK member. This is not what I'm saying at all. I'm not trying to promote some kumbaya dance, right? But I do think that racism is in and of itself misguided. It's like a misguided truth. It's like a trauma, like I saw this video once where they compared racism and narcissistic personality disorder. And it really, really blew my mind, because in a way I feel like racism can be a lack of mental acuity, a lack of mental health. And it can be traced back to childhood, just like most of issues that you go through, whether you got issues with depression, anxiety, fear based trauma, PTS. I feel like a lot of that stuff can be traced back to trauma that you might have experienced in early development, and I feel like racism is the exact same thing. So I don't necessarily look at every bigoted Ken or Karen out there as like the Antichrist. I look at them as misguided, and so these people on Fox News, take that and just multiply it to the nth extreme. But I do think we're coming into a time where people are trying to find that humanity in all of these conservatives who have just like gone off on the deep end, and even the far left. I see some far left people who basically somehow whip right around to far right. It's just weird. I saw this video, and it was documenting this man who left MAGA and how he's trying to basically shepherd other people out of it because he thinks it's a cult. And he said something really interesting on this podcast. He basically was like, and I'm sorry I can't remember the name, but he was basically like, right now America needs to work on reconciling these MAGA people with their families. And how powerful is that? It's like these people have probably alienated themselves so much from their families, their neighbors, like probably every person, entity, community outside of the conservatives, quote unquote, GOP community. And I think that's true. And I think it's true for the far left as well. I think that there are some people they've stopped to look at nuance, and they've started to look at things in black and white, and it's probably caused a lot of turbulence within their community. So I think that's the way in. I think the way in is honestly compassion. I think it was Obama who said, like, it's my duty to protect your rights even if you hate me. I think, and I'm loosely quoting, but it's something like that. It's like, even if you might hate me, we still got to put this stuff on the table. You can't change history. So I thought that it was really interesting. The film was incredible. I would recommend for anyone to watch it. Leave the World Behind. It's on Netflix. It is quite long, but it's very thought-provoking. It really will make you think. Julia Roberts is, of course, just as amazing as she was 20, 30 years ago. The whole cast is really just like a blowout cast. Check it out.